Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another movie review. This time we are looking at Machete Kills. Um, and I'm kind of actually happy. I had a little bit of a delay on reviewing this one. I saw the movie yesterday, actually, and now I'm making the review today, and I'm kind of happy because it's given me a little bit more time to digest. Sure, there's probably like little moments that I kind of want to talk about the film, but have already forgotten. And but I think I got a little bit better perspective on the kind of long-term impact of this film, and it's kind of mixed, actually. I enjoyed the film, but I didn't overly like it. It was watchable, and in fact, this is one of those I will probably, if you saw it on TV, I would sit to start and watch it. But it's hard to articulate, but I didn't quite get that into it. And I think maybe the movie was too self-aware. Was a little. Here's the other thing. It's difficult to class where Machete Kills falls in. Now, I will confess, I have not seen the original Machete all the way through. It's one of those movies that you keep on catching 2/3 of the way in or 1/3 of the way in, watch it for 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and then, oh crap, gotta do something else. So I've never actually seen the entirety of Machete. I know, my own fault, and from what I've seen, I liked those scenes. I liked what I've seen. But this one, while the original one was very clearly a homage to the Grindhouse, it was part of the Grindhouse movies. A love letter to the exploitation action films, or specifically the ethno-action films of the 70s. They keep elements of that they really starts to lose what it's doing. It seems very confused about what it's falling into. Is it an homage to the old 70s Grindhouse style movies? Is it a modern movie? Clearly not, but it doesn't. It just seems to have lost a bit of its direction. And actually, it kind of seems a movie that's built around its trailer, which it is. That is the whole point. But I've seen those 70s movies where they bank a movie and they have scenes in there that are there just for the trailer. They're out of place scenes, yeah, but this one I think is a little bit more different in that they do really create a trailer first and then they make a movie. But I don't think with this one, I don't think they've thought it out as much, and I think they also way too heavily sequel baited it on this, to the detriment of the movie. They way too much was yeah, we're totally gonna go to space next time. Basically, this movie is nothing but a setup. This entire movie is really just a setup for Machete Kills in space. And I think that's its problem. Now that I just said it out loud, that's its problem. This movie is not its own thing. This movie exists just so they can set up a Machete Kills in space. That's the thing that holds it back. That and having characters that do absolutely nothing and make no significant impact on the entire film. You have the character where, let me see if I remember his name. It to me at least is somewhat forgetful. You have, where are you? What was your guy's name? I cannot remember which guy he was. But your main villain on this, Mendez. Duh. Mendez's guy, who kind of drops out by the second act. And by the way, spoilers alert from here on in. You care about spoilers with Machete Kills. This is not a film that relies on its plot. You have a guy character who is quite literally insane. They establish that he's got split personality. As it turns out, he winds up having he's got 3 personalities. He's got Mendez, the drug cartel crazy, Mendez the revolutionary, and then Mendez the Mexican secret agent. And I don't know what they're doing with that. It seems like a really weird thing to decide to throw in there, just so they can have this absolutely insane character, but still have him around. So like, okay, he goes insane, but then when he's not insane, he's like the nicest guy ever. Okay. But yeah, he gets this little, of course, the classic. It's attached to my heart, and this missile will fire and destroy Washington. Okay, it's an exploitation send-off film. We can buy with that. But of course, then he drops off and Mel Gibson shows up, which, okay, technically Mel Gibson is in the opening scene. Which, by the way, I'm gonna just, I know this is a film that you're supposed to, kind of look at. Yeah, this is a completely stupid situation. You do see these in like the old 70s movie, but the film starts off with this military convoy comes in, the troops get out, they are all decked out, ready for battle, they are in full body armor, they're starting unloading these crates, and then of course Machete and why am I blanking out on her name all of a sudden? Jessica Alba show up, who, with just a pistol, each just have a pistol, and they're like, freeze, ice on the ground, and like the troops are just like, oh shit, okay, like full. There's like 20 of them, full body armor. They've got M16s at the ready. They're like, oh well, fuck, 2 guys in with a pistol. We can't take this on. Granted, one of them is Machete, but they don't know that. And okay, that's a little bit of, I will buy that as a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, like, there are stupid setups like this in those type of movies. And then of course the cartel shows up, and of course they're cartel guys. They got their suits and they got their guns, and they just like show up and they decide to take on the army guys. Like, we're not gonna pay you. We're just gonna take the weapons. Seems like a bad business deal, because then you can't buy more weapons from these guys. And of course they open fire, and all the army guys just die. Like, normally this setup, the army guys are gonna, win because they're wearing body armor. They've also have assault rifles, and they're more disciplined and probably, but they're actually trained. Gangsters really aren't trained. They don't go out and like do target practice several days a week, and then actually score themselves and have their stuff analyzed. Okay, your targets are off by, you're not scoring up to your points. You need to improve by doing this, and the other. The cartel's not having that done. But again, I buy it as part of the homage, like, to those really bad movies where they do stuff like that, and I was letting that slip. And then of course, because then they have another group of like black ops mercenaries show up, and they just massacre all the cartel guys, like, no effort. Like, they show up and they go, and all the cartel guys just go over. Not a very realistic fashion, but okay. And it starts off okay, and I'm kind of picking up on the homage elements in that first scene. And then of course, Jessica Alba gets shot by Mel Gibson in a lucha libre mask. He's wearing that. You're like, why are you wearing that, Mel Gibson? But again, it's Machete, and that first scene I actually was very fine with, but it gives you a little scene. But I did kind of go, you know what would help sell that scene? If you didn't have to have the guys in full body armor. That'd help at least with the army guys getting massacred to a degree. But again, I can buy it as at least going, yeah, see, there's stupid scenes like this Granted, back then in the 80s and the 70s, troops didn't wear body armor, so it was a little bit more believable. They didn't have that edge in a gunfight. But like I said, that part was okay. And then they're taking the elements. What's like I didn't the wall, which is I guess is something from the first movie. I don't recall scenes with that in the first movie, but okay. But you know, it's a hard R movie. You got the strippers, the chameleon character. The chameleon character, which I like to call the cameo machine, because I kind of got the impression in the trailer like that there was like an army of assassins coming after them, and if that was the case, I'd be okay. But it was just one assassin who just keeps on changing his face to different characters. Like they start off with Walter Goggins, he switches into Cuba Gooding Jr., who then switches to become Lady Gaga, who then finally switches to become Antonio Banderas. I was okay, but it would have probably been more fun if it was like just various assassins and they're each showing up, doing their own thing, being their own character. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of a fun gag to it because they had this when he's transitioning, he gets the voice. He still has the voice of his previous, so you have scenes where it's like, it's Walter Goggins' voice with Cuba Gooding Jr.'s acting, and then it's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s voice with it's Lady Gaga speaking, but Cuba Gooding Jr.'s voice is coming out. But again, that character like doesn't do anything. He's got like one scene where he kind of like holds Machete at gunpoint temporarily, has him start to dig a grave, and then gets shot up by a bunch of rednecks. Like there was really that character didn't do much, and they're really building him up throughout this entire movie. And there's no big confrontation with him. He's a very much a side character who is just kind of gets like a text message. Oh yeah, there's a bounty on Machete. Well, I guess I'll go collect that. That's it. Then he dies, but apparently, I guess Lady Gaga's coming back in Space One. So, assuming, they have an asterisk in there, actor subject to change. But the movie feels underwhelming because at the end, Mel Gibson escapes scarred and wearing a mask into space. Machete goes to follow him up, and then it kind of ends. So it doesn't have any real resolution. It doesn't feel very homage to the genre, in which case most sequels were like in-name only sequels, sometimes with just like the same actor. This is a very modern thing they did with this movie's plot to set up another movie. Even in films that were designed, like if you go back to I'm looking right at it too, aren't I? Where are they? The missing in action movies. Missing in Action 1 and 2 were filmed back to back. They knew they were coming out with a sequel. Kind of a nice little side story here, but they actually wound up reversing them in their release, because as they were making them, they realized that the first Missing in Action, what turned out to be Missing in Action 1, which was supposed to be Missing in Action 2, was the stronger of the two films when he goes back to Vietnam and to rescue other survivors. So they released that one first. And then what was Missing in Action 2 was supposed to be the first one, which they realized it's not a bad movie. It's just they knew that one was the weaker. But even that, the two movies were made very much with the exception of Chuck Norris, very different. They kind of bring up a couple of little threads that are carried on from one movie to the other, but that's about it. And what I mean by threads is there's a quick mention in what is Mission Impossible 2, or Missing in Action 2, that Chuck Norris, well, you're being held here as a war criminal, not a POW. And then in the first Mission in Action movie, they mention that too. They say, yeah, well, Braddock was being held here, but yeah, he wasn't a POW. He was a special case because we considered him a war criminal. And that was about it. That's the extent of the crossover. There was no setup. And even if you view them in their original intended order, there's no indication like, I'm going to go back to Vietnam now. None of that. And there was you didn't have that sense to write that back in the day. You just didn't. That you set up a movie was its own thing. Even if you were going to write a sequel later, I think probably the first person to really write a movie where it's like, okay, we're going to purposely leave the tendril set up for the next film was George Lucas with The Empire Strikes Back. Is probably the first movie that I can recall that really has that setup. Discounting horror movies that are just ending on that shock ending moment, which is not really setting up a sequel, but a lot of times the sequel then will use that as a starting point. The first movie that was really set up with a sequel in mind that I'm sure maybe somebody will point out something earlier, but really Empire Strikes Back I think is the first one. So this whole setup of them going into space, I think is what holds it back. But the Mel Gibson character is really fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing him now in The Expendables, because he's basically apparently going to be playing a somewhat similar character in that he's an arms dealer that apparently was the original, like one of the original Expendables. But in this one, he's just like the head of a military-industrial complex type corporation. And he's apparently like a huge sci-fi guy. He actually he's got the land speeder from Star Wars, and he's just like, yes, I'm a Star Wars fan. And they start driving around in a really bad green screen scene, but I can buy that in this one. They're driving around, he's kind of establishing that he also has psychic powers, and this is like his performance is very Mr. Machete. I can't quite do his view, but he does a really good view. And I don't want to call it egotistical, but like he's got this weird element of sophistication to him, where it's not super sophisticated, but I don't know. It's a good performance, is the best way I can put it. He has this very nice he's like polite and explainy, but at the same time he's a character that will shoots one of his servants that comes in, because the psychic power is like, I'm sorry, Mr. Machete, but that man was about to drop a bottle of 1956 Chardonnay, about to waste a bottle of 1956 Chardonnay by dropping it. Could not have that. I don't know. The other thing I think they were kind of messed up with this is they had like the trailer for the in-space stuff at the beginning. Yeah, I understand that's a tradition carried on from the previous film, but I think that kind of really ruined things. It told you where this film was going, and if they had ended it with that trailer, which they kind of did, okay, I would have maybe liked it a little bit more. I would have preferred it a little bit more, but you kind of knew a little too much about where they were going. Especially as soon as Mel Gibson's character shows up, you're like, But, again, looking at this 24 hours from now, it's a very I enjoyed it when I was watching it. As long as you're in the right mood. I could see people not liking it. Especially if you're going out and you want to see something good. this will not satisfy that appetite. If you want to waste time, it's going to be a good, fine film. And this is, again, like I said, if this is a film, if I'm flipping around on TV and I come across it, I'll start watching. I'll sit back and watch it a bit. But that's about it. So I hope that review was useful. Kind of not, probably, but then again, that's, like I said, that's the problem with the film. So if you I can't say if you enjoyed the first one you'll like this one, because I haven't seen the entirety of it. The first one I think also had a slightly different tone, but I digress. So if you like the film, check out some of my others. Like it, subscribe, yada yada yada. I'm posting up with this a Walking Dead review, so check that out. And adios.